This year, Pennsylvanians will choose our state's next governor. Our current governor, Republican Tom Corbett, has been met with staggering low approval ratings and continued dissatisfaction amongst voters, particularly for his policies on education. In the upcoming primaries on May 20th, Democratic candidates Tom Wolf, Robert McBride, Kati and Allison Shorts will be competing to be Corbett's challengers. Also on May 20th, a special election will decide who replaces Bill Green in Philadelphia City's council, and voters will also weigh in on an important local ballot initiative to extend a living wage to all city contractors. We're joined in the studio by some guests who can tell us more about what's actually at stake at the ballot and what each of us can do on the election day. Thank you guys so much for joining us. Can you guys introduce yourselves and tell us a little bit about who you are and what you're doing?
Sure. My name is Kati Sipp. I'm the director of Pennsylvania Working Families, which is a new organization that is devoted to winning electoral and legislative victories for working people in Philadelphia and in Pennsylvania.
Hello, my name is Hinton. I'm a parent. I'm also the chair of our education committee at Action United. Action United is a member organization, and our members consist of low to middle income families, and we advocate around issues that affect us in our neighborhoods and our communities. Right now, we're heavily involved in our making our schools better and making sure our kids get the proper funding they need to make sure our schools are well resourced.
And I'm Susan McBride. I'm representing POWER, which is the acronym for Philadelphians Organized to Witness, Empower, and Rebuild. And it's part of a national network called PICO Network. And we're working specifically to get voters out. Mostly we're focusing on voters who don't normally vote in the primary in off-year election. And we are trying to get them to come and vote yes for the ballot question number 1. That is to raise the minimum wage and benefits. It's for people who are subcontracted for the city. So that's the focus of our campaign. We're also asking them to think about what the fair funding formula should look like and listen to candidates with that lens.
All right, well, thank you guys so much for coming, and look forward to having an interesting conversation with you guys. First off, why is this particular election important for the people and the organizations that you guys work with? Like, I mean, there's elections come and go all the time, but what's key about this particular one that's happening?
Governor Corbett is suffering from phenomenally bad approval ratings, not just in the city of Philadelphia, but in Pennsylvania as a whole. He's seen as one of the most vulnerable Republican governors. And it's really because his policies have been taking resources out of our cities and out of towns across Pennsylvania and making sure that the 1% continue to get richer and richer and richer, while the rest of us are dealing with schools that are crumbling, we're dealing with infrastructure that's crumbling, and we haven't seen any kind of a job recovery here the way that some other states surrounding us have seen. I think that anybody in Philadelphia who isn't concerned about the way that the city and the state are going ought to think about it.
And in addition to that, we have a governor who slashed education budget by $1 billion. And instead, he's been investing in prisons. And so I'm particularly concerned about that. I live in a neighborhood which is low to middle income, and our schools are suffering and our children are suffering, and it's not right. And there's an attack on our teachers. Instead of addressing the real issues, we have these elected officials that place blame on teachers and all this other stuff instead of really addressing the real issues. And so if we get another governor in here who supports our education platform, then we could really get some change and really make sure our kids are prepared for their future.
Mm-hmm. POWER organized in Philadelphia just a little over 2 years ago, and asked the local congregations for their top issues, going one-to-one on congregants. And really jobs was the primary focus. It was obviously in the middle of the recession, and as you say, the jobs were not recovering. But, and started working with city council to try to get a minimum wage raise for the airport workers. When the contract for the airport was first coming up earlier last year, I can't remember the exact dates, but that didn't happen, and we were very downhearted about that. But Wilson Goode picked up the idea of making it a citywide issue and put it on the ballot. So for Power, it's the first concrete action that has come to fruition, and so we want to show City Council that we can get this thing passed. So that's why it's important. On the ballot issue is important for Power.
Thank you guys so much. I'm really excited that you guys are all going to be here. Now let's look at some of these important issues through the eyes of voters and Pennsylvanians who are going to be directly impacted by them.
So my name is Min Nguyen.
My name is Jessica Rossi.
My name is Audra Trainham.
I'm Vietnamese American. I'm the youth organizer and program manager at BPSOS Delaware Valley.
And we are at the Community College of Philadelphia Library, where I am the current library department head.
I'm a mother of 4. I have 3 granddaughters and 1 grandson who I love very much.
I guess what I would like to see is a governor who supports public education. That's first and foremost.
And we've been getting phone calls after phone calls. These Vietnamese community members want health insurance. So in the state of Pennsylvania, we did not expand Medicaid. So this is a huge issue.
I would also like to see our governor raise minimum wage. No one can live off of $7.25 an hour. And most people that make the $7.25 an hour are really part-time workers, and people aren't taking home like much at all. I'm an office cleaner. I clean offices in University City. I'm also a member of SEIU 32BJ. We fight for our communities. We fight for workers with low wages. We go out and we organize these workers. You know, I have met workers that were making $7.35 an hour, and they'd had 3 and 4 jobs. And there's no way in the world that I should have a job and work a full-time job and still have to depend on the government for food stamps. That shouldn't happen. I would like to see our governor close the corporate loopholes where somebody has an address here, but they're doing a business here and not paying proper taxes here. How is it that you think low-wage workers could pay more taxes than corporations?
If our students are going to a public school in Philadelphia, which does not have a library, and that's a good number of them, then they might not have ever walked into a library. And that makes me really sad. It would be nice to see a governor come in who supported public education, who invested in community colleges. And so much of our funding does come out of student tuition because the city and the state just aren't keeping up their promise to us when we first started as the Community College of Philadelphia. Support by the state financially would just help me do a better job. You know, I think we'd have more resources to serve our students. You know, when I'm looking at candidates for our governor, I'm going to look at their history and their experience with supporting public education.
We treat the people that we register to vote as like family members or friends. You have to vote. This is really important. Here's how you can vote. We can help you. I could only imagine if you don't speak English and you're being turned away from the polls, how likely you won't be a voter in the next election, right? This also affects like Latino communities, it affects other communities that are non-English proficient, it affects the African American community, right? There's huge issues when it comes to trying to dismantle voting rights all across the country. Asian immigrant communities and Vietnamese immigrant communities have not had a political voice. And it's time for us to be able to connect with other communities. Our values around peace and justice and love and family unification, these are all values that everybody cherishes. I feel like the governor race is one of the most critical elections we've ever had in the city's history. This will change the socioeconomic landscape and educational conditions of our city for generations to come. So if folks want to be able to have a voice in how our future develops, you need to go out and vote.
So those are some of the key issues at stake in the governor's primary election coming up on May 20th and leading into the general election this November. Let's hear a little bit more from our guests because you guys are here for a reason, so I want to hear you guys' your take on this. So first off, how have current Governor Tom Corbett's policies affected the communities that you guys all care about and that you work with? And what issues will be defined by this year's elections in your point of view?
In terms of the issue that we're particularly concerned about in the primary, the minimum wage, Corbett's against raising the minimum wage. He says it's going to cut jobs, but well, that hasn't been really, I mean, there are studies, it depends on who you read, but the Republicans normally say it'll cut jobs, but in fact what it does seems to be to stimulate the economy and make people be able to get off of the SNAP program and get off Medicaid and feel good about what they're doing. $7.25 an hour only makes you $15,000 a year, which puts you below the poverty line. So we're way behind other states in beginning to think about what to do about that.
Yeah, and I mean, let's be real. I mean, the cost of living over the years has increased tremendously, while the wage that people are getting just has been stagnant for many, many years. I mean, it's this idea of like how are we supporting our communities and our people and making sure that they're able to thrive in all the different areas, right?
Right.
Right. I think that the Medicaid expansion is another good example of a program that, you know, the governor could have taken billions of dollars of money, free money from the federal government to provide health care for people in Pennsylvania, and he didn't do that, and instead, so now there's, you know, hundreds of thousands of Pennsylvanians who haven't benefited from the Affordable Care Act, while the states all around us are full of people who are getting health insurance for the first time and consequently have access to health care that's going to improve their lives.
You know, we have an SRC, a School Reform Commission, which does not include any voice of parents, students, or community. And so that's a problem, right? You know, there's issues that happen within our communities, and in order for those issues to be addressed and for our schools to be fixed and to be addressed, it's going to have to come from those who are directly affected. And so having this SRC where the governor appoints 3 members and our mayor appoints 2 members, that shuts out the community, that shuts out students, it shuts out parents. And so we need to just get rid of it, right? And so that's an issue. So we need a governor who's willing to abolish the SRC, who's willing to repeal Act 46, you know, bring back local control so that parents and students and communities can take control of our schools and really fix our schools.
So it sounds a little bit like you want the democracy, you know?
Yeah, imagine that.
All right, so let's switch a little bit locally. What are you guys' thoughts on the role of Philadelphia in this race? Why? I mean, our city's awesome. We love our city. We have awesome cheesesteaks and amazing food. But why is Philadelphia important for this particular election? What are your guys' thoughts on that?
Well, I'll start that one because what Power is focusing on is primarily the ballot question number 1, which is strictly to raise the minimum wage for a subset of workers in Philadelphia, with the idea that these are going to empower those people, but through the setting that example, hopefully others will pick it up. And so as has happened in many of the other states where this has happened, one city tries, like Seattle and Tacoma or San Francisco, or a state like Maryland. You know, the state's actually done it in Maryland, raised the minimum wage. But here, nothing's going to happen in Harrisburg if it's with a Republican control. So Philadelphia will be the standard bearer to show that you can do this in a city and set the standard for the state.
I would say too, I mean, more in the general election than in the primary, that one of the reasons that Governor Corbett got elected in 2010 was frankly because many people in Philadelphia stayed home. And so I think, you know, we saw that Philadelphia was only 10% of the statewide vote share in 2010, and it was 12% of the statewide vote share in 2012. And Obama obviously handily carried the city of Philadelphia and also the state of Pennsylvania. So Philadelphia, if we want to make sure that Governor Corbett is, you know, one-term Tom, then we need to make sure that everybody in Philadelphia goes out and votes on Election Day, not just on May 20th, but also in November.
I mean, it only makes sense that Philadelphia play a key role in making sort of these changes happen and making sure that progressive policy spread throughout the state and throughout the country as well, right?
Right.
So I think right now we want to turn our attention to ways that people are working to build political power to our human rights through this election. Let's watch some clips from some of the campaign efforts that are already taking place across our region to build power from the grassroots.
Our goals are clear. The passage of the 21st century minimum wage ballot measure. Our second goal is demonstrate to candidates that there is a mandate to pass a full, fair funding formula for Philadelphia schools and Pennsylvania schools as all. We are 45 houses of faith, representing 35,000 people throughout the city of Philadelphia. We're going to do teach-ins, we're going to give education, we'll talk more about a voter Sabbath.
What does it look like when we move people and we become powerful? What does it look like when we become powerful that we have the capacity to begin to transform and change this city? How many of you are ready to put your hands to the plow? How many of you are ready to put your hands to the plow? How many of you are ready to get the job done? So I need you to reach for your plow right now. You know what your plow is? It's your cell phone. There you go. Everybody reach for your cell phone. Let me see the phones. Hold your phone up in the air. So we're going to do a little bit of phone banking practice. Tonight, we're going to ask you to call 2 people. The objective here is for us to build relationships with the people that we're talking to on the phone so that we can begin to build a powerful cadre of people all across the city who might or might not belong to our congregations, who are concerned about the very same issues that we are.
It's going to take every person standing up. It's going to take every leader organizing. It's going to take every phone banker calling. It's going to take every canvasser knocking on doors.
Fast forward to Wednesday morning, May 21st. Good morning, Power. How do you feel?
Keep on walking, keep on talking, keep on voting, keep on knocking, keep on voting, keep on knocking, marching on the freedom land. Who's schools? Our school! 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 Who's schools? Our school!
We've been working for the last 2 years in PCAP. We've started to build a movement, but we now have to move to the next stage. We have to take this struggle from the streets to the ballot box. We're going to stay in the streets, but we're going to go to the ballot box as well.
This year, Governor Corbett decided to invest his funds and everything in prisons instead of our education.
We need a governor who prioritizes ending the school-to-prison pipeline and supports restorative justice programs in all schools.
We need a governor who will be there for us, the young people, for our generation.
So what we're doing today and the next weeks coming, we'll be making history to take back our schools and to take back our communities.
Let me get a no education, no what?
No education, no what?
No education, no what?
No education, no what?
So today, as we talk to our community members about their pledge to vote come November, there are some key points that we should remember. That we need a fair funding formula. That we need more revenue for education. That charter schools need to be held to the same level of accountability as our district schools. That we need to end the school to prison pipeline. And that it's time to get rid of the SRC.
When May comes around and November comes around, we ran a governor out of Central High, we're going to run a governor out of Harrisburg, and we're going to run the SRC out of Fort Worth.
We have learned that nobody is going to do this work for us.
We have to be about building progressive, independent, working class power in our city.
I envision a city where we are all leading.
We are human beings. We deserve respect, dignity, and honor.
We absolutely must be serious about these 3 words. Schools, not jails.
We are in a fight for our movement to have impact and influence on a larger scale.
Across sectors, across areas of work, across neighborhoods, across languages.
We look to one another for leadership and know that our vision is in fact shared by the majority of people across Pennsylvania.
This campaign is a beginning and not an end in itself.
We have enormous potential to anchor a broad, progressive, working class movement in this moment, and they know it.
Welcome back. We are joined in the studio by Hinton of Action United, Kati Sipp of Working Families, and Susan McBride of Power, Philadelphians Organized to Witness, Empower, and Rebuild. We are now talking about what is at stake at the upcoming governor's race and local ballot initiatives, like the referendum for all city workers to receive a living wage. Welcome back, guys. So next, we were talking a little bit about this before we saw the show, about the idea that people need to get out and vote, right? That it is vital for this particular election that we get the people to come out and participate in the democratic process. What are some of your organizations doing and working to build grassroots people power through this for this election and also for down the road?
So I'll start. Our organization, Action United, like I said, we're a community organization. So part of our motto is we go door to door talking to people. So right now what we're doing is we have a campaign with our coalition, PCAPS, Philadelphia Coalition Advocating for Public Schools. And we're going door to door, and we're getting folks to pledge to become education voters. And so what that means is you'll sign a pledge card saying that you'll vote for the candidate who stands for our five-point platform, which is to bring more funding into our schools, to institute a fair funding formula, to abolish the SRC, to get rid of state control and bring back local control to our schools, abolish the school to prison pipeline, and we want charter accountability.
So the Working Families Organization is a coalition. The Action United is on the steering committee of, as well as a bunch of other Pennsylvania or Philadelphia organizations, including AFSCME District Council 47, 1199C, SEIU 32BJ, to name a few. And so we are doing some of the same work that Action United is doing and some of the same work that Power is doing. So we have a goal of collecting 50,000 pledge cards to support the minimum wage, the 21st Century Wage Initiative Question 1, that'll be on the ballot. We're also doing a petition to hopefully put on a ballot, or on the ballot in November, a charter amendment that essentially would demand that the mayor and city council do whatever they can to take back control of the Philadelphia schools from Harrisburg.
Nice. And last but certainly not least, Susan, what are you guys doing?
Well, Power is an organization that has 41 members. So they're mosques and synagogues and churches. And each member has agreed to, as a target, to convince people who don't normally vote in the primary to vote. And what we're trying to say to them is, look, this ballot amendment is to your advantage. It's going to empower you, and it'll be something that the city can do for you. So come out and vote. So we're choosing a tough population. So our target for the city is modest. It's 5,000, but in order to get 5,000 voters.
I love how you said that that's modest.
But we're targeting this population. And so we're phoning and we're canvassing, and every congregation, every synagogue and mosque are doing the same thing.
I think the really beautiful thing about what you were just explaining was that Power is very interfaith, so you're working with very diverse communities. And in a city as Philadelphia, it's important that we're targeting as many many of our communities that are eligible to be able to vote. But on that point, I mean, we know that not a lot of people, some people may not be eligible to vote, but actually do get affected by certain policies. You know, prime example, the immigrant communities. So is voting enough?
I mean, at our organization, we definitely, we see voting as a tool. I think the most important part is bringing people together, you know, and really organizing and coming together as a community. And we can share information. And, you know, you don't have to agree with my perspective, but at least you have the full story where you can at least make a decision for yourself. Because right now we have other folks that are making decisions for us. And so, again, like, just organizing and bringing people back together. Like, people don't even know their neighbors anymore, which is like crazy, you know? And you know, I did a canvas last summer and going door to door and talking to folks, and everybody has this idea that nobody cares. And I'm like, well, you know, I'm here to tell you that people do care. You know, it's like, you know, and so there's just this disconnect. People aren't talking to one another. People don't know their neighbors anymore. And so if we can just, you know, start bringing folks in and talking about this stuff, then, you know, I think we can make some huge, huge change.
So what are you guys' thoughts on how can people get involved in not just the voting aspect, but also in this community building aspect and the empowering efforts that everybody here at the table is actually working on? Kati?
I mean, I think, you know, no movement ever won anything without struggle, right? And that's, voting is part of the struggle, but it's not going to win everything for you. You have to do other stuff too. And so, I mean, for some people that means going out and talking to their neighbors. For some other people, it means going to a church and phone banking. For some folks, it's be online and do, you know, online activism. I think that we have to see all of those things as sort of complementary ways that we can build a movement that's going to move a progressive agenda forward for our city and our state.
Right, and I think the key word that was mentioned earlier is that this is grassroots. This is about the people making the choices and putting the issues that matter to them on the ballots, and not having people, you know, out in Harrisburg or in Washington make the decisions for us. You guys can all find out more about Kia Hinton's work at Action United's website, actionunited.org, Susan McBride's website from powerphiladelphia.org, and Kati Sipp's work with working families at workingfamilies.org. Thank you guys so much for coming out, and thank you guys for all the amazing work that you and your organizations are doing.
Thank you.
So here are the highlights of what's on the ballot for May 20th. Registered Republicans will have a pick between Robert Guzzardi and current Governor Tom Corbett. Registered Democrats will have a pick between Tom Wolf, Robert McCord, Katie McGinney, and Allison Schwartz. Also in the statewide races, voters will be able to select lieutenant governor in either party. And here in Philadelphia, voters will choose in a special election for city council at large between Republican Matt Wolf, Democratic Ed Nelson, and Libertarian Nikki Allen Poe. And one of the 3 charter change referendums is the one that we have been discussing today. It is question number 1, the minimum wage and benefits ordinance. To find out about other races locally, visit 70.org for the Committee of 70 and PhiladelphiaVotes.com for the Philadelphia City Commissioner's Office. Thank you for watching The Spark, Stories That Change Our Times, produced by MMP TV. For more stories about everyday people who are leading the way in winning our human rights, visit us online at thespark.tv. Once again, I'm Miguel Andrade. Thanks for watching.